Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It has been years since Stephen Keshi passed away, and I would like to talk about his legacy. How do you think what he has done for Nigerian football? How do you think he will be remembered in Nigerian football?
Um, the morning he died, I was woken up by one of the TV stations, and just like I'm sitting with you now, that's how I was sitting with them, and they asked me what should be done to immortalize Stephen Keshi. And I did say at the time that Nigeria has no respect for his heroes. So I'm not expecting Stephen Keshi to be properly immortalized. I do not expect, I felt that within a few months, Stephen Keshi will be forgotten. And I've been proven right. I don't think there are many people of a certain Nigerians, the generation of Nigerians who are more vocal about football now. The generation of Nigerians who are in the public space, who speak about football now and all of that, they identify more with players from La Liga, with players from the Premier League, with players in the Serie A, than they would with Nigerian legends of Nigeria, Nigerian sports, Nigerian football. So I've had conversations in the last few days around Stephen Keshi, and there are people who who don't know that much about him. I don't blame them. One, I also blame them on the other hand, because if we do not respect our own, if we do not celebrate our own, then who is supposed to do that for us? How then do we convince up and coming people that it's important to represent Nigeria? It's important to quote and unquote lay down your life for the country. So to your question, I not many people will understand. So the question for me, as I always say this, is Nigeria's most influential football person ever. Nobody can come close. Nobody. I'm not even, it's a hill, to quote you Gen Zs, it's a hill I'm willing to die on. There's nobody that comes close. The influence of Stephen Keshi on Nigeria's football, none. The irony of this whole life is that while he was battling for his life that night in 2016, I was speaking to a teammate of his from the AFCON 84 team, somebody who just disappeared. And a few days earlier, I'd gotten his number in the US. His name is Chibuze Hilebu. Not many will know this name. But I got his number in where he was in Atlanta. So I sent him a message, and he replied that I could call him. So I called him, and we spoke for like 25 minutes as I was driving home. And he explained to me that during AFCON in '84, that Paris, there was a club in France who had come for him and Stephen Keshi following that AFCON, right? So the idea was that they would move to a club in Ivory Coast and stay there for 1 year before coming over to France. But Chibuze Hilebu said his parents were not having that they needed him to go to school, which was why he left Nigeria and went to the US to further his studies. As soon as I dropped that phone call with Chibuze Hilebu, promising that we would speak in a few days, my phone started ringing. And I was being told, this was around 2 a.m., I was being told that Stephen Keshi had died right at that time. So it's one of those things that will live with me forever, how that happened.
Right. Damiloju, I'd also like to bring you into this conversation now. What was your fondest memory of Stephen Keshi?
It has to be the 2013 African Cup of Nations. Going into that tournament, I don't think anybody realistically thought Nigeria was going to win the AFCON. Let's forget all the things that people might say after. We had some quality players in that squad. Victor Moses was still in Chelsea. Ahmed Musa was doing his thing for CSK, Moscow, Brownie Day. We had a few players, but there were a lot of unknown quantities in that team and a lot of local-based players. And I don't think a lot of us expected that the Super Eagles were going to win the AFCON. And not only did we win the AFCON, we did it. I know Sunday Uba is a name that will never be forgotten on the lips of Nigerians. And Stephen Keshi, you saw from that video that started playing from the FIFA video of how passionate he was about football, talking about how if he could, he would turn off his brain from football for a day, but not really, it's not going to happen. I think that AFCON really stuck with me. I know some of you other gentlemen with the white hair and the rest will tell me about his playing time, but for me, that AFCON as a coach, bringing an end to that drought since 94 of us not winning the AFCON, I will never forget it.
Of course, now, Calvin, in 2022, the federal government handed over the certificate of occupancy and other land documents to the late Stephen Keshi and 14 other members of the 1994 Super Eagles of Nigeria. Now, the sports legend himself was given a 3-bedroom flat in Delta State. Was this feat noble enough from the federal government?
Can I just respond to that, to what Damiloju said about that 2013 AFCON win? Fortunately for me, I was with the Super Eagles squad from their camp in Faro, Portugal, till all the way to the last game at the FMD Stadium in Johannesburg. That day in Johannesburg, February 10th, 2013, I still consider it one of the best days of my life, because I was one of the few people who stuck my neck out that this team was going to win that AFCON. I really did. And that was only because I stayed with those players in camp, and I was with Keshi, and I saw a determination in their faces that I didn't see anywhere. And they were aware. All of them were aware that Nigerians didn't rate them out. They were aware. And you know the funny thing, I have to tell you this, something bad name will never be forgotten, which is correct. Excuse me. A few years ago, I was in Abuja. I was with Sunday Mba. I was interviewing Sunday Mba at a hotel. And we found the state somewhere in Abuja to interview him. Do you know that there was nobody in that hotel who recognized Sunday Mba?
Wow.
Not one person.
Wow.
Not one person recognized Sunday Mba.
Wow.
That 2013 AFCON winning team, I'm sorry to say this, but I remember making tweets that until we celebrate that team properly, we will never smell another AFCON win. We've showed that team so much disrespect. Let me tell you things that people don't realize about that team. They never considered first in any match. Never. They did not lose any game. They did not take any match into penalties. That was the team that won the AFCON in 2013. They were deserved winners of that AFCON 2013. But Nigerians always treat them like it was an accident. This is part of what breaks my heart about people, young people who want to represent Nigeria. We don't. The federal government in 2022 is rewarding people for winning AFCON in 1994. How does that even make sense? How? Something they won in 1994, you are rewarding them for what you promised them in 1994. You're giving it to them in 2022. Do you know how many people have died by that time?
Yeah.
So what's the point?
True.
So these are the things that are heartbreaking when you start to think about what it takes to represent Nigeria. And you were talking to this tennis boy, the tennis Adamu guy. And at the end, you were talking about people in diaspora who sometimes don't want to come to represent Nigeria. These are the reasons.
Right.
These are the factors what is attractive about it? Well, just before we came on air, I was thinking about people who have coached Nigeria. I was thinking about Onibide. Onibide was the person who made Keshi captain and took Nigeria to our first AFCON final outside Lagos, and that was 1984. And I was thinking, when Onibide dies, what are we going to use to honor Onibide? Because what he did with that team in 83 and 84, he was sensational in the stuff that he did. I remember that I was in secondary school, and I could not believe what was happening. He was Nigeria's first indigenous national team coach. The first chief coach, indigenous. And he did well. He took us to the AFCON final. But do we celebrate him? Anytime people hear Onibinde, there's always fun. There's always fun. Baba Tisha or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's a legend right there. I'm sorry, I'm taking people off track.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's still talking about the federal government and our sports stars. Now, the federal government received criticism for not attending the late Stephen Keshi's funeral. Now, ex-international spoke about this, most especially Taribo West. Let's take a listen to what Taribo said when Stephen Keshi was buried.
He was a brother. And to some of us, it's not only a brother, he was our captain. And it's a very sad day. I don't have words to express because it could have been any of us. The treatment also from the federal government is very bad. And somebody will put his lifetime as a sacrifice to the nation. At the end of the day, there is no feedback or return. So you show that sports icon in this country has no future.
Now, Calvin, this is Taribo West. One man we know that he stood out for Nigeria when it comes to the defensive position. And you get to remember a couple of other names, Uche Okechukwu, there's also Victor Inyama, a lot of them who played for Nigeria back then. How many, I can really indeed mention, how many people really remember these names of superstars who played for Nigeria? And you get what Taribo West said, that it is a shame that the government, they don't even recognize his greatness on the football pitch. Where did we even get this wrong?
Obviously, no. A few weeks earlier, a 26-year-old South African goalkeeper, Senzo, forgotten his surname, died. He was given a national burial. So I remember making a post on Twitter at the time, and I put together photos of Senzo's funeral side by side with photos of Stephen Keshi's funeral. The difference was like night and day. It was an absolute disgrace what Nigeria did to Stephen Keshi's burial. I'm hoping, but I'm not, I won't put my money on it, that they will do better with Christian Chukwu's burial. But see, the way Stephen Keshi's burial was handled there's nothing short of disgraceful. I can't find, Taribo West is absolutely spot on. There's nothing short of disgraceful. Nigeria has 3 AFCON wins. 3. Stephen Keshi was instrumental to the winning of 2 of those AFCONs. 2 AFCON titles. And yet, he was buried, and there was no federal government delegation, as Taribo West was saying there. Again, like I said earlier, this is what I mean. Why would young people look at this and then they want to give their all for Nigeria? There's nothing. Apart from quote unquote flexing. There's nothing. There's no attraction to it. That's the point. There's no attraction. Representing Nigeria is not attractive at all if you have other options.
It is a sad situation right there for how we get to treat our players and all. This is 9 years after, and I know I saw a report sometime on social media saying that till today, no immortalization has been done for Stephen Keshi, and we wonder when exactly, how long do we have to wait until we get to start recognizing our national heroes? It is quite distasteful. And again, when you look at these sports stars who refuse to represent Nigeria, they get blamed for not wanting to represent their national, their country, and I mean, it is quite a disaster. But I'd like to hear from you now. Where do you think we should correct our wrongs in this country?
Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? No, last week, about 10 days ago. Athletes returning from the national festival in Ogun State had an accident going back to Kano. Had an accident, and 24 people died. I cannot begin to tell you how many arguments I got into in my groups, especially one that has Nigerian sports administrators. Serious arguments. The boss that took these people, these athletes coming from Ogun State back to Kano, they got that bus in 2017. The bus, according to one of the survivors, the bus kept on breaking down on their way.
Wow.
Why? Why would people who are going to represent a country, a state in sports, why would they die? And then what happens? They start to give their families 1 million naira each. These people could have been flown, if their family would have been flown from somewhere straight to Kano. And we might not have had this death. And the worst part of it, there is not one person that will be held responsible for this death. Not one person. Because in other countries, what we're going to have is there are people who will be held for negligence. Some people will be charged for negligence. Some people will be charged for something homicide, because manslaughter. Because people you chose, somebody made that decision to put them on that vehicle.
Right.
Somebody made that decision. So that person has to be held responsible for what has happened. But we don't do that. We don't respect athletes. We have very little respect for athletes across board. And I have no idea why we do this. And we don't value lives. So I don't see anything changing. Nothing is changing. Not in my lifetime. Maybe while you young people are here, but not in my lifetime. I don't see anything changing at all. I've tried, but I find that when I say things like this in some groups, I'm being accused of trying to cry more than they need. But that's the way it seems. That's the way we are, and that's how we prefer to see things. So I don't see anything changing at all. We seem to be. We're more comfortable doing things this way.
Well, we keep hoping, we keep praying that one day things will change in sports, in how we go about doing things in the country. I say thank you very much, Calvin Onwuka, for joining us today, and it was really a pleasure, and of course an emotional one having you to talk about Stephen Keshi, the late Stephen Keshi, the big boss himself. I'd say thank you very much.